G'day everyone, Greg Canavan here. In today's conversation with Ryan Dintz, we're going to discuss in further detail one of the key recommendations we've made for our new money investor product this year. I hope you enjoy it. Moving on to the miners now, we discussed them just before when we were talking about Bitcoin. Have they come off a little bit with the recent fall in the Bitcoin price?
Yeah, so they got off to a flyer. We had three Bitcoin miners, Marathon, Hut 8, and then we had another one called Core Scientific, which was in the process of listing it. That's due to happen this week, I think. So if you did have the shell company shares, which was XPDI was the code, that will change over the next few weeks to Core Scientific. Yep. They're raising $250 million, I think at $10 a share. But yeah, so they got off to a flyer when we put off the report. I think they were up, 30, 40, 50% at one stage, all of them. But with the Bitcoin price falling, they've fallen back down to earth. So I suppose my point would be is if you've not had a chance to buy them before, look at that report again. And this could be a good time as start topping up as a long-term investment.
And are all of those companies holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, or are some doing it more than others?
They all hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Now, in a way, the market sort of views them as a proxy for a spot ETF in some respects. So that's something to be aware of, because they are holding Bitcoin. If you're an investor, an accredited investor managing other people's funds, and you want some Bitcoin exposure, you're not allowed to buy Bitcoin directly because it's not within your mandate.
That's how you get it.
You might not want to buy a futures ETF because the price can sometimes be quite disassociated from reality. So some of them are buying, Bitcoin miners for that pure Bitcoin exposure and the fact that they can mine more and they hold it. Some are buying companies like MicroStrategy, which have committed to holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So them being priced as proxy spot ETFs can be a good thing, but be aware that if an actual spot ETF is approved, there might be some shift in the dynamics of those price. But the key thing with Bitcoin miners, what I see as the sort of blue sky potential is they're not just data centers mining Bitcoin, holding it, and that's all they're doing. The big picture, and this is something I think Greg Foss might have touched upon in that interview we had with them earlier this year, is that they're actually helping disrupt energy markets. So again, Ted Cruz, our friend Ted Cruz from Texas, just said that he thinks Bitcoin miners could strengthen Texas's grid. And they do that because when you have an electricity grid, the hard thing to do is to manage supply and demand.
Yeah.
You need to keep it in balance. And that's very tough to do because you don't know how many customers you're going to have at a certain time. The idea is by having Bitcoin miners as users, you can develop models where Bitcoin miners become the customers when there's spare power, and you can turn them off when there's power needed elsewhere as well. So some people say, hey, Bitcoin miners are going to use all the electricity. If you do this properly at a state level, you can have them as the ones taking up the slack. Now, not only does that make electricity more reliable, it also makes electricity providers a lot more profitable. So an idea I'm going to try and look at for 2022 is is this going to be a paradigm shift in how we value energy, various energy markets and energy providers, and now there are opportunities to invest in that ahead of the curve.
It's funny you say that because one of the stocks in my advisory portfolio is Origin Energy, and the market is virtually attributing no or negative value to its coal station in the Hunter Valley. All the value is about the LNG terminal and exports that go off to Asia. And that's really because of this whole economics of energy. And as you said, with huge amounts of renewables coming into the grid, the traditional use for a coal-fired power station that would supply baseload energy is not there anymore. So what you're suggesting is the Bitcoin miners are going to do the same job as the baseload energy guys on the demand side, whereas the baseload would supply the baseload power, whereas the Bitcoin guys can come in and demand that power at certain times when other demand's low. So that's a really interesting. Now, I don't think that's all of a sudden going to mean that coal-fired power stations become hugely profitable, but it does suggest that we could look into certain areas where they might be being undervalued by the market at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you think one of the good things about Bitcoin mining as well is that it can be done from anywhere. So you think about stranded assets that might not be economically feasible because they're not maybe necessarily close enough to population centers, are suddenly maybe more feasible. They're not as stranded because you can mine Bitcoin from them and maybe use that Bitcoin mine to generate infrastructure to power a town. That's what El Salvador are doing, for example.
Yep.
And even renewables, it makes renewable energy a lot more attractive for that very reason. A lot of renewable energy sources, you're constrained by geography. You might have a dam,
Yep.
but it's nowhere near where the population lives. And to create a whole new, town near that is going to cost far too much. So you can tap into that to either create that town or to fund infrastructure elsewhere in your country. So I think on a number of energy fronts, and I can't even think how this is going to play out, but it's something I know is going to be bigger than what people realize. And I think that's something we need to try and find a way of investing in 2022.
And hopefully next year we'll be able to, we've been trying to get, there's a young guy who's doing some work for the US government on a lot of this sort of topic. And we've been trying to get a hold of him. He keeps telling us that he's getting a media clearance and to get back to him in a few months. So hopefully 2022 we'll be able to bring you more information.
I think he's just got media clearance. So give him an email because I've seen that he did a podcast recently with someone else. So
okay then. All right.
Give an email.
We'll do it. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of New Money Investor. If you'd like to become a subscriber, please click on the link below. Thanks a lot.